What is up, homies? My name is Felix, and I'm here, back again, with another video for you all today, for you lovely people today. So as you all know, I make a lot of videos for people using LMS, but I also have been noticing that there's a lot of people that are switching from LMS to FL Studio recently. I figured what would be a good video for people who are just getting into FL Studio, for people who just bought it, or maybe are just, starting to use the demo or something like that. I figured it might be helpful for you guys to learn how you can make fire, dope, super swag samples and melodies by only using stock plugins in FL Studio. So I'm not even going to be using any extra effects plugins or anything like that. It's going to be all stock. Everything that's inside of FL Studio already, I'll be using in this video. Well, everything except for the drums. So anyways, yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing in this video here today. So before we get started, make sure you guys check out my Instagram and my SoundCloud, which will both be down in the description below, along with the playlist of songs I've produced, my beat store, my Discord, all that stuff. You should go check it out if you wish to do so. And yeah, now let's get into this video. Alright, so here we are in FL, and we are going to get started on this super swag melody made with stock plugins. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the classic, the best plugin of all time, FL Keys. So now that we have the greatest plugin of all time loaded up, we're going to adjust the velocities a little bit. So I'm going to turn the velocity up a little bit, and then I'm also going to turn the stereo up, and then the release and the decay up just a little bit. And I'm just going to keep it on grand piano. I'm not going to change the preset or anything. And now I'm going to get started working on this melody. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to adjust the tempo, and I want this beat to be pretty fast. Alright, so I have the tempo at 176, and I think that's a pretty good fast tempo for me today. And I'm also going to go to scale highlighting, so I'm going to go to helpers, scale highlighting, and then E minor, and then I'm just gonna, put down some chords pretty much. Alright, so I have our first three little chords here, and now I want the chord progression to kind of go up a little bit, and I think I want to bring it back down at the end. So I'm gonna do another D major chord. I'm gonna do another E, I think, maybe. Alright, so we got our little chord progression, and now I'm gonna copy all these bass notes down here like this, and then I'm going to go like that, and then do Alt, and then down on the scroll wheel. Alright, so I like how that sounds, and now I'm going to put a little counter melody over the top of it. Alright, so we got a little top melody now, and it sounds like this so far. So I like how this is sounding so far, and it's not anything really too crazy. But one important thing to keep in mind is that you can't really just take a bad plugin or a stock plugin and turn it into something good just by adding, a bunch of notes. You can get it to sound somewhat good by, having a good chord progression and having, a good sounding melody. But however, just adding a bunch of stuff isn't gonna make it sound good. But hold your horses, because I'm gonna show you how we're gonna get this to sound good in a minute. So first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna copy this over again by doing Control B, and now I'm going to change this second part of this melody and make it something a little bit more unique. Alright, so I just finished the second part of this melody, and now it sounds like this. So as it is right now, this is pretty dry, this is pretty boring, so I'm going to do a couple little things to spice it up. I'm going to do Alt S, and now I'm going to strum these chords so they'll sound a little bit better. And now I'm going to do Alt R, and this is going to randomize the velocities, and make sure you turn up this a little bit. So now that we have that, we're going to do something a little bit more fancy that's going to really turn this into something cool. So I'm going to do Control L, and now this is going to sound into a mixer track, and now we're going to click this little thing right here, and then just do Alt R, and now this screen will pop up, and yours should look the same as this, and if it doesn't, just make it look like this. And now click Start. And now this is going to render what you just made as an audio clip. So instead of having it like this in MIDI form, we're going to have it like this in audio form. And now what we're going to do is we're going to drag it in here. We're going to double click on it. And now change this to generic bleeding. Change this to auto. And now we're going to pitch it down by like 6 or some amount like that. And now I'm going to cut off the end. And now it's going to sound like this. So now that sounds pretty cool. It sounds a lot cooler, and it sounds like, you know, a completely different plugin, because if we were to do the same thing here, if we were to just go shift and then down 6, this is gonna sound similar, but it's not gonna have the exact same feel. As you can hear, it still has that kind of toy piano stock plug-in-y kind of sound, as opposed to this where it kind of flows a little bit more. So we're gonna have that like that, and now I'm just going to right click on this, go replace, and then just hit delete. And now this is gonna replace it with basically a sampler, which is, you know, just nothing pretty much. And the reason we do that is so we still have the MIDI pattern in the background, so we can see it, you know, when we put other melodies in there, and so we can have the ghost notes and everything. So yeah. So now that we have this, we can just assign this to mixer track 1 as well. And now we're gonna be able to see the sample inside of here. And now we're going to add a couple more different sounds. So I'm gonna add a sound from a VST called Autogun, and this is a really interesting VST. I don't really know if I like it or if I hate it, because there is literally like a bajillion different presets, and most of them are honestly kind of trash, but some of them are actually good. And the one that I'm gonna use, I remember, is 766, I think. So as you can tell, there's, you know, crazy number of presets, but 766 is like this cool, like, I don't know, like deep sounding, almost bassy kind of sound. I don't know, it's just cool. So I'm gonna use this. It's pretty dope, and basically what I'm gonna do with that is just copy all the bass notes. So I'm gonna go like this, and it's important that you pitch down your MIDI for this, because otherwise you're gonna be placing it in the wrong notes. Alright, so I just copied all the bass notes of the piano melody into the Autogun VST thing, and now it's gonna sound like this. So obviously it's gonna need a little bit of mixing and everything like that, but for now it sounds pretty dope, pretty intense sounding. So I'm gonna do this to a mixer track. And now I'm gonna adjust the volumes just a little bit. So the piano is still sounding a little bit dry, but that's one thing I've got, you know, in the back of my mind for when we go into the mixing portion of this. So next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into Sakura, which is a plugin that you probably have the demo version of, and I think if you use the demo version, you're not like technically supposed to like sell any beats that you make with the demo version. I'm not totally sure about that, but just don't say I didn't warn you on that one. So in Sakura, I'm gonna find like a flute or like a lead, just a little something to complement the piano a little bit. Alright, so I found this dope little like ambient sounding something or other. And now I'm gonna make a little pattern using this. Alright, so I had the first little piece to this melody, and it sounds like this. And now I'm gonna go in and make the rest of the 8-bar pattern. Alright, so as you can see, I started out the same way, and then I kind of brought it way up high, and then I made a descend, you know, kind of like some stairs, kind of like an escalator, just a little bit, and then I popped it back up at the end to lead right back into the start here. So yeah, now the second half of this sounds like this. So I think this is turning out pretty nicely so far. What I'm gonna do now is actually do the same thing that we did with the piano, and I'm gonna export this as an audio file. And I'm doing this more specifically because of the audio cut out every time you use Sakura, which is kind of the annoying thing with a demo version, but you know, after all, it is the demo version. So basically I'm just gonna do Control L, and now I'm gonna hit this thing, and I'm gonna uncheck this one because we don't want it to render again. And I'm just gonna do Alt R, then start. Alright, so now we have the audio file version inside here, and now I'm just going to replace and then delete, and then I'm gonna assign this to mixer track 3 as well, and then turn it down because it is quite loud as well. So I like how this is sounding so far. One other thing that I wanna add is like a lead or something like that, and I'm gonna go to Citrus for that. So Citrus is a really good plugin. It's probably like one of the best stock plugins that FL Studio has to offer, and as you can see, literally my entire screen right now is filled up with presets, and these are all presets from Citrus. If you're looking for a good plugin for, you know, sound design and stuff like that, Citrus is a super good plugin for that kind of stuff. But what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to click on this basic subtracting 7, because this is a little synth, little lead thing that I like. So now for the little lead thing, what I think I'm gonna do is I think I'm actually going to play it on my MIDI keyboard that I have right here. And we're gonna hopefully get a little nice sounding pattern. So I'm gonna go to piano roll, I'm gonna hit this thing, and then just do notes and automation. And now I'm gonna hit start, and now I'm gonna record my thing. So I do like how this sounds, but I am going to change a couple little notes here and there to kind of fit it with the way I'm hearing it more in my head. But for now, what I'm going to do is actually quantize it a little bit better. So you could do Alt Q, but I like to just adjust it like kind of manually. And now I'm kind of going to adjust the notes that are playing. All right, so I have the first half finished, and now I'm going to do Control B it over and put it back here to start on the second half. Alright, so I finished the little lead pattern, and I actually really like how this is sounding. And my thought process with this one is basically the same thing. I kind of just, did the descending pattern, but with, kind of different notes than I did with the other one. And then kind of just, with the beginning part, it was kind of just, I did whatever I decided to play on the piano. And I just kind of came up with this. So yeah, pretty much now I think this is good. I might add just one more sound. And kind of the important part with, making beats with stock, plugins and stuff like that is layering. You want to kind of layer stuff, but also at the same time, you don't want stuff to be really crowding each other. You want to kind of give it space. So with the piano, I kind of, kept it kind of simple, and then some of the other sounds I complicated them a little bit more and gave them a little bit more of a rhythm to them, I guess you could say. So I'm going to assign this lead to a mixer track, and now I'm going to add one more sound, and I'm not sure what plugin I want to use actually, but I'll figure it out. Alright, so I figured out the next plugin I want to use, and this next plugin is called Plucked. And this is another super simple, super basic plugin. As you can see, it literally has 2 knobs. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the color down, and then I'm going to turn the decay up, and now it's going to sound kind of like a weird video game sound. It's almost like a harp a little bit, but it's a little bit, tougher, a little bit more abrasive. And I'm going to just copy the piano pattern and paste it in here, and then put this up near the piano. So yeah, with the Plucked, I'm going to just put it in Control L, and now I'm going to put it near the keys. And now both of these are going to sound like this together. So that's pretty basic sounding right now, and it's kind of, a little bit weird and kind of abrasive sounding, but I'm going to add effects onto all of these and make them sound really cool and really dope. So the first thing I'm going to start off with, because now we finished with all of the adding plugins and adding sounds and stuff, and we have, a good amount of layers right here. We have 5 layers, which is, pretty much enough to, add different variations within the beat and stuff like that. So I'm going to go to the FL keys, and now I'm going to make this pretty stereo. And I kind of want the FL keys to be the center of the beat a little bit. So what I'm going to do is go into here, and now I'm just going to turn up the boost a little bit. And now with this, I'm going to add a reverb onto it. So that's sounding pretty good, and now I'm going to add an EQ, so parametric EQ2, the best one on the earth. Now I'm just going to cut out a little bit of the bass frequencies, but I don't want to cut out too much because I did pitch it down, for the sole purpose of getting kind of some of those bass frequencies. So we want to just cut out a little bit. And then cut out a little bit of the top end as well. So for the piano, that's all I'm going to do. With these sounds, you don't want to, go too crazy with the effects and stuff like that. You do want to put effects on them, because if you don't, then they'll just sound like dry, and they'll sound, as if you used stock plugins. So you want them to kind of sound like you did not use stock plugins, but you don't want it to be overcrowded with effects and overcrowded with notes and stuff like I mentioned earlier. You want to keep it kind of simple, but let it all flow together a little bit. So now that we have this, I'm going to move on to the Plucked. And with this already, I know I want to cut out a lot of the high end. So I'm going to go in here, cut out a lot of the high end like this. And cut out some low end as well. So I think for the Plucked, what I want to do is I want to add some reverb. I'm going to add reverb with pretty much everything. So this reverb, I want to be, kind of a little bit smaller than the piano. So I'm going to turn the size down and then turn a couple of these down too. But also what I want to do is I want to add a decay on this. So the decay we're going to put on, but we're going to put the decay on before the reverb, because we want the delay to go on first and then the reverb affect the delay afterwards, if that makes any sense. So basically I just put the time like this, and then I turn the cut and the volume down a lot, and then I put it on ping pong, because that'll make it, go like this, and that's kind of a cool, dope little effect to have. So I think that's good for now. I was thinking about putting maybe like a flanger, like a chorus on it or something, but I think I'm just going to leave it as it is. And now for the Autogun, this is like that ambient kind of sound. And for this, we want to leave pretty much most of the frequencies in there, because it's kind of meant to be like a bassier sound. But what I'm going to do is add some reverb. And we want this to be like really wide, like really stereo, because it's an ambient sound, and we want to just make it ambienter. So for this, I'm going to take an EQ and then I'm just going to cut out like the really, really low bass frequencies, like down here. Because you can't even hear those frequencies unless you're like a newborn baby anyways. So I'm just going to keep that like that. And then put like a slight little low pass filter on it as well. And now I think that's pretty much good. And now we're gonna move on to the Sakura. So you guessed it, I'm gonna put some reverb on this too. Just a little bit, not too much. And now for this, I think I'm gonna mess around with putting a chorus on it and see how that sounds. Alright, so I just put the default chorus on it and I didn't really change anything much. And then I'm going to put some EQ on it. It's a pretty standard procedure that we're going to use for most of these. Alright, so moving on to the next sound, I'm going to do this little lead thing. And I want this to be pretty stereo as well. Most of your melodic components are probably going to be pretty stereo, but some of them you kind of want to be more stereo than others, and some of them you want to be more kind of streamlined. So, keep that in mind when you're, doing this as well. So for the lead, I'm going to use a new little plugin here, and I'm going to use the flanger. And with the flanger, I'm going to do this preset called Ultra Fat Chorus. And this is kind of going to give it a little chorus effect and make it really wide in your headphones as well. So now I'm going to put some reverb. But as you can see, I kind of made this reverb a little bit smaller. I don't want it to be as extreme as the other ones because we do have the flanger on here that kind of makes the sound a little bit more pronounced, I guess you could say. And then as usual, going to add a little bit of EQ. So again, for the EQ on this one, I'm not going to do anything too extreme. I'm just going to cut out a little bit of the low end. And it's not even really low end, it's kind of like mid frequency, but the low end of the spectrum that's within this sound here. Alright, so that's pretty much like the whole purpose of the video right there. I just completed this whole melody, and now the whole thing sounds like this together. So I think that sounds pretty dope, and there is more stuff that I could have done with it if I did have some extra plugins or something like that, but I wanted to keep this video authentic. I wanted to use all stock everything for this. So yeah, now just to add kind of the little cherry on top, I'm going to add some drums to this, and since this is kind of a very melodic melody here, I'm just going to add some pretty simple drums, nothing too crazy. Alright, so basically what I've done with the drums is I just added a clap, and then I added a simple little two-step hi-hat pattern, and then I added the 808 in here. And one thing that I noticed with the 808, and I kind of knew that I was going to have to do this anyways, is that the 808 is really high up. So I want the 808 to kind of be at like a more reasonable area. I don't want the 808 to be like super high pitched. So I think for the 808, I'm going to figure out where I like it to sound, and it's probably going to be like around like G sharp-ish. So we're going to pitch everything down 2, that means. So what I'm going to do here, since all these are melodic components, is just go like this, and then just do transpose and then -2. And now these are all going to be -2, but we have to change the samples to -2 as well. So I'm going to take the Sakura, and then I'm just going to go to the pitch and then just do down 200 cents. And then same thing with FL keys. We're going to do, instead of being -600 cents, we're going to do -800 cents. And now it's all going to sound like this. So yeah, as you can hear, it has a little bit of a different vibe to it now, but the 808 fits, quite a bit better now, and it's not super high-pitched and annoying. Alrighty, so I just finished this little drum pattern. It sounds like this. And I'm going to assign all these to a mixer track, and then I'm just going to do a little bit of mixing on the drums, and I'm not really going to show this. I'm just going to skip through it because this is how to make fire samples with stock plugins, not how to mix drums and stuff like that. Alright, so I just finished doing the mixing on the drums, and now the last thing I have left to do is just lay out the beat, and then we'll be done with this video. Alright, so I just laid out the whole beat, but there's a couple other little things that I do want to mention here. So, especially when you're making beats where you're using stock plugins and you're using, a little bit less quality plugins, one important thing to do is kind of keep your melody and keep your beat unique by adding different automations. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to automate a low pass filter on these keys right here at the beginning. I'm going to bring up an EQ and then just go EQ2, and now just do like this, and then actually do a little bit more. And now right click on this, hit A, and now it'll make an automation clip, and what we can do is just drag this like that, and now it'll fade out here. Like that, and that's a nice little transition that we can use. Now another really important thing that I want to do is add a little bandpass filter on this like atmospheric Autogun sound. because this has a lot of bass frequencies and I don't want it to mess with the 808 too much. So we're gonna go to the Autogun thing and then just do like this, EQ, and now do the bandpass. So we can allow like a little bit of low end to pass through, just like enough to where it's not gonna mess with the 808 and the kick. So I think that sounds good, and now I'm gonna do right click, A, and now for this one, we're gonna put it anywhere where the drums are playing. So like this, and then we're gonna cut it out in this little area, bring it back in here. So now hopefully this sound isn't gonna clash with the 808 and the kick too much and get it really muddy and gross sounding. So one other thing that I wanna do is I wanna add a crash because it'll just, transition the drums a little bit better, but that's not really part of the, actual sample making. All right, so now I'm gonna show you maybe a couple little extra things you can do to kind of spice up your melody. So what I'm gonna do is this little sound right here is the other one that I bring in, this sound. And what I want to do is I want to fade the volume in at the beginning. So we're going to do right click and then automate and then volume. And now this will bring up a nice little convenient automation track that's like right here for us to use. And I'm going to just go like this, and now it's going to fade in when this crash comes in. And probably the average person listening wouldn't even notice that, but it's just a little thing that keeps their ear, interested. It keeps them wanting to listen, Just little stuff like that can be really important when making your beat sound unique and getting it to not sound super repetitive. And so now for a couple different parts, what I want to do is I want to put that EQ, that low pass EQ that we had, back onto the piano so it sounds, cool and gives it a new effect. So I'm going to go like this and do that like this here, and now it's going to sound like this. It's gonna sound almost as if that Plucked is like the main sound playing, but there's that piano kind of tucked away, and it gives it a little bit of a role reversal, you might say. So I'm also going to go in here and show you guys what you can do with gross beat. And I think gross beat is like technically not a plugin that comes with FL. Like I think technically gross beat is what you're buying when you get the producer version as opposed to the whatever other version of FL. I'm not totally sure how that all works, but I'm just going to show you a couple little things that you can do with gross beat. So you want to have your gross beat be above everything else because all the other sounds will affect it afterwards. So we're going to go slot 1 and then just do gross beat. And you could do a couple different effects with this. You could go to halftime like this. And that sounds pretty good. Another thing you can do is you could give it like a sidechain like this. And that's a cool little effect as well. It gives it kind of like a pulsating feel. With gross beat, you kind of just have to mess around. You just have to click on stuff and see what you like. One really important thing that I see a lot of people skip over when you're doing stuff with gross beat is if you're doing melody stuff with gross beat, you want to click this little arrow and then do click reduction and then high. And this will basically get rid of any clicking that you have within your melody and stuff when you put the gross beat on it, and it'll sound much cleaner. And then I'm going to bring the volume down on the sidechain just a little bit. And now I'm just going to right click on this, hit A, and now we're just going to add this in at pretty much like a random point. We can add this in here if we want to. So I just did a little bit of an effect that goes like this on the gross beat with the Plucked sound. And it kind of just like slows it down and then slowly goes back into being regular. And I think that's a pretty cool effect, and it just, like I said, adds something different, keeps it unique. And there's also like a million other little things that you can do here and there to kind of make your sample sound more unique and make it sound as if you didn't use stock plugins on it. But honestly, it's just really about being creative and using the tools that you have at your disposal to make something that doesn't sound basic, something that sounds unique and cool and dope and swag and awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much gonna do it for me in this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I think this beat turned out pretty fire, and I quite like it a lot. And literally every single sound in the melody came from, just stock FL Studio. So yeah, this is just another one of those videos that kind of shows you guys that you don't really need a whole bunch of expensive, omnispheres and nexuses and stuff like that. You don't need all that fancy stuff. You have FL Keys, the greatest plugin of all time. So yeah, once again, I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you guys check out my Instagram and my SoundCloud down in the description below, along with my playlist of songs I produce, Beat Store, all that stuff you guys already know, and I will see you guys next time.
Feezo.